Hello and welcome to the ongoing saga of the restoration of my 1969 Triumph GT6 Mark II. Embarrassingly, the video that I recorded earlier, the camera was in its case, and so the sound was almost unintelligible. So I'm going to have to voice over this. If you watched the last video, you would have seen that I was debating whether or not to use this gantry that I built. And I have, in the intervening month or so since the last work, decided that it's not going to be suitable. So I've gone out and bought a standard engine hoist crane at Princess Auto. It was on sale, so it was a pretty good deal. So I'm not going to be using the hoist for any of the work in the future. I haven't decided yet whether I'm just going to disassemble it or whether I'm going to put it aside, but in any case, I don't think it's going to be suitable for the work that I need to do. So what I've decided is that if this video is going to be of any worth watching, then maybe I should actually be talking about some of the things that I'm doing on my car and showing some of the things that I'm doing that might be useful for others rather than just a bunch of snapshots. So what I'm going to talk about today is the building of the rotisserie that I will be using for the body tub. The plans for various types of rotisseries have been around and can be seen on various restoration websites. Most of the inspiration I got for mine is out of some of the postings on the Triumph Experience website, and I'll try and post the link to that so that you can see where I got the basic dimensions, especially things like the center of gravity calculations. So I'm going to, in this video, show you some of the dimensions and some of the construction that I've done for the rotisserie. As you can see, it's not quite finished yet, but I'm hoping sometime in the next week to have that complete and to get the tub up on top of or get the tub mounted on the rotisserie. So on these sketches you can see some of the dimensions that I've used to build this. This is essentially an inverted U or a sideways C, depending on how you want to look at it. But the two uprights and the crosspiece have a total height of about 38 to 40 inches. I'm using 5-inch wheels that have a total overall height of 6 inches. And the reason for this configuration is I want to be able to fit the frame underneath this entire assembly because of the small amount of space that I'm working with. So this would allow the tub to be up high and then the frame to be tucked in underneath all of this if I've got the dimensions right. You can see that the gussets here are going to give it sideways strength, and there'll be runners from the front section to the back section to provide front to back rigidity, and then there'll be plywood gussets in that as well. I'll hopefully be able to show you those as they get assembled. This diagram is kind of a side-on view, and you can see the rear over on this side, and over on the right you see the front sketched out. And in a second I'll show you a little bit more closely with some close-up photos how I put these together. This is done with 1x2 and 1x1 steel tubing. And then there'll be a pivot which is going to be a 1-inch tubing supported on the top of the cross members of the end pieces. So this is a bit of a close shot of the rear assembly. You can see that there's a 1x2 with a piece of 1x1 welded on top of it. Now, the dimensions of this, the small piece of 1x1 is actually 4 inches in length, and the 1x2 is 16. And I think I should be able to illustrate, yeah, here we go. So 16 inches for the 1x2, and in a moment you're going to see the 1x1 is 4 inches. There we go. Another thing to note here is that at the on the right hand side of the picture, just up where the tongue of the tape measure is right now, it might not be obvious, but there's a couple of washers that I've tack welded in there just to give that more in plane with the trunk. So with these dimensions, there's actually still enough room to be able to drill through holes that will fit into the same holes that the bumper would normally be mounted to. So those two bolt heads you see actually go up through into the interior of the car where the bumper mount would be bolted. Now further along there's a rear support that goes into the upper bumper mount hole. It's about 9 7/8 inches back. This upright is intended to provide some additional rigidity to this assembly. When I first put this together, it felt a little bit wobbly, so I added this upright to it, and with that upright in place, it's plenty solid. And that upright, if I remember correctly, is about 5 3/4 inches. The other thing is that with that upright, if I'd had a good metal cutting saw, I might have been able to make an angle cut that would have allowed me to put a piece in at an angle like this to get a better contact at that rear bumper mounting point. But without the ability to make a good accurate cut, I opted to go with perpendicular, and that seems to provide a pretty good fit. Now, welded across the back here, you'll see there's, of course, the two supports for the bumper points, and the outside dimension of that is 44 inches. And those are both welded, again, to another piece of 1x2. They're pretty close to square. Did my best. I think they're pretty close. They're at 43 7/8 inches, which seem to give a good fit for the location of those bumper mounting holes. The next part of interest is the upright here. That is a 12-inch piece of 1x2, sistered against another piece for additional strength, and then a 1-inch bearing pipe that will be the pivot point. Now it's mounted at about 11, centered at about 11 inches above that piece of 1x2, and that dimension is based on measurements that I got off of that Triumph Experience posting, which hopefully you'll see the link to, and there's a post in there about the center of gravity calculations that somebody had done previously. So compensating for the fact that I'm lowering the mounting point on this compared to the original that I'm taking this from, I've made the calculation that that point of rotation should be at about 11.5 inches above that bar. And here on the inside you can see where these bolts come through the reinforcing points for the bumper, and they actually provide great rigidity. I'm very, very pleased with how well this seems to work. Alright, so now I'm assembling the front cross piece. This is going to be the part that ties into the front of the tub. Over here, you can see it's going to go from that point to that one over there on the opposite side. So this is a piece of 4x4. I actually have actual 4x4. And at the center, I've cut a notch into it to take this piece of pipe, 1x2. That notch is 2 inches wide, 1 inch deep. And then I put a couple of 3/8 inch holes through that piece of square tubing. That next step is going to be to drill holes through the piece of wood to take those 3/8 inch bolts. And then once that's assembled, I'll be ready to move on to the next step. And here's the assembled crosspiece with the bolts through. Next step will be to get another piece of that 1 inch pipe, which will be then welded to become another bearing up at the top around here. I have to check the diagram again, but I think it's about 10 inches from the crosspiece, top of the crosspiece, to that bearing point to get the right center of gravity. And that's pretty much it for today. Not sure if I'm going to finish this off tonight and upload it, or whether I'll do some more tomorrow. Thanks again for watching.